Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Janmadyasya Yatanvayadi Tarata Sharite Shwabhikya Swarat Tene Brahman Hridaya Radhikavaye Muyanti Yasuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadana Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Dharma Projita Kaita Vatra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayam Mulanam Shrima Bhagavate Mahamunikrite Kim Viparairishvara Sadhyo Riddhavaruddhate Trakritibi Shushu Shabhistakshana Nigama Kalpataru Galitam Palam Shukamukha Damrita Dravya Samyutam Vibhata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Moruraho Rasika Bhuva Bhavukaha Paramananda Pataya Prema Vakshaksharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume Hari Om Tat Sat Srimad Bhagavatam Canto Chapter 4 Verse number 20. Yata nevam vidoghedo yata atma viparyaya deha yoga viyogha samshritir nanivartate. I'm going to read the translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. One who does not understand the constitutional position of the body and soul, Atma, becomes too attached to the bodily concept of life. Consequently, because of attachment to the body and its byproducts, he feels affected by union with and separation from his family, society, and nation. As long as this continues, one continues his material life. Otherwise, one is liberated. Purport. As confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 126, Savai pung samparo dharma yato bhaktiradukshage ahaitu ki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. The word dharma means engagement. One who is engaged in the service of the Lord, yato bhaktiradukshage, without impediment and without cessation, is understood to be situated in his original spiritual status. When one is promoted to this status, one is always happy in transcendental bliss. Otherwise, as long as one is in the bodily concept of life, one must suffer material conditions. Jama mritu jara vyadhi dukha doshanudharshanam. The body is subject to its own principles of birth, death, old age, and disease. But one who is situated in spiritual life, yato bhaktiradokshage, has no birth, no death, no old age, and no disease. One may argue that we may see a person who is spiritually engaged 24 hours a day, but is still suffering from disease. In fact, however, he is neither suffering nor diseased. Otherwise, he cannot be engaged 24 hours a day in spiritual activities. The example may be given in this connection that sometimes dirty foam or garbage is seen floating on the water of the Ganges. This is called nira dharma, a function of the water. But one who goes to the Ganges does not mind the foam and dirty things floating in the water With his hand, he pushes away such nasty things, bathes in the Ganges and gains the beneficial results. Therefore, one who is situated in the spiritual status of life is unaffected by foam and garbage or any superficial dirty things. This is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Iha yasya Hare dhasya karmana manasa gira nikila swapyavastasu jiva mukta suchit. Quote, a person acting in the service of Krishna with his body, mind, and words is a liberated person, even within the material world. Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu 1-197. Therefore, one is forbidden to regard the Guru as an ordinary human being. Guru Shru Naramate Naraki Saha. The spiritual master or acharya is always situated in the spiritual status of life. Birth, death, old age, and disease do not affect him. According to the Hari Bhakti Vilasa, therefore, after the disappearance of an acharya, his body is never burnt to ashes, for it is a spiritual body. The spiritual body is always unaffected by material conditions. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So the verse says that the root problem of souls is that we identify, the root problem of souls is that we're unaware of our own constitutional position. Yata nevan vidho bhedo. So here this means there's an absence of awareness of our own nature. It's quite interesting that it could be possible. Just like suppose your body is made of fire, but you're not aware that it can burn or that it gives warmth. How is it possible? How is it possible that you can have a body made of fire, but you don't know that it burns, that it illumines, that it gives warmth? So the jiva has an absence of awareness of his own nature. As a result of this absence of awareness of his own nature, he conflates himself with the material body. Yata atma viparya. So there's a conflation of the self with the material body due to an absence of awareness of his own nature. And from that conflation of the self with the material body, then the fun begins. Yeah, that's when the fun begins. Deha yoga viyog cha. So the word deha means the body, and the word yoga means union, and viyoga means separation. So because of conflating the self and the material body, we become affected by the duality of coming in contact with bodies and separation from bodies. This verse is spoken by Kamsa, and he's trying to speak it as a form, as like a palliative for the nonsense that he did. But he's trying to now describe philosophy to Devaki. And he's saying that, well, the reason that you're affected, if you are in fact affected, the reason that you are affected by separation from your children is because you're in the bodily concept of life. Otherwise, you should know that this is life, that some bodies, they come to us and then we're separated from bodies. And only those who are affected by the material concept of life, they are the ones who are seen to lament. So there's a nice verse about this also from Srimad Bhagavatam. Another one, Yasmat priya apriya viyoga samyoga janma. Shokagnina sakala yoni shuddhayaman. This is a very nice verse. So this verse is saying, speaking of the experience of the conditioned souls, Prahlad Maharaj is speaking this to Lord Nrsimha. So he says here that this is the experience of souls in this world. That which is priya, priya means dear, that which is very dear to you, there is viyoga, separation. And that which is apriya, not dear to you, there is complete union. Isn't it? This is the experience. For example, what is dear to you? You want to be happy, right? Somehow the happiness is not coming, separation. And you want to avoid the stress, but somehow there is complete union with the stress. This is the experience of everyone. Sakala yonishu, animal, all species of life, all devatas, all humans. And as a result of this, shokakina dhyamana, our hearts are being burned in the fire of lamentation because of this. Now the real fun begins after this too. Dukoshadam ta'api dukam. This is my favorite line of the verse. He says, then they try to find remedies for this suffering. Dukkha oshadam. Dukkha oshadam means a remedy for dukkha. So they're suffering as a result of being separated from what is desirable and being completely united with that which is undesirable. Their hearts are burning with lamentation. They try to find a solution to this dilemma, dukkha. But their solutions is itself dukkha. Dukkha ta api dukkha. The solution for dukkha is itself dukkha. Yeah. Just like when people are suffering, they take the drugs, for example, or they binge watch the Netflix. They try to give it a positive spin. They do a marathon. Watch a whole season of some nonsense while eating chocolate and popcorn. And the solution for their suffering is itself another form of suffering. Dukkha down to api dukkha. Atadiyaham. So atadiyaham means same point as the first line here. Yatane vanvido. Because they do not know the self, the true self. Atadiya. There is absence of awareness of their true self and the root problem of their suffering. Bhumam brahmami. In this way, souls are wandering all over the world, suffering this way. So Prahlad Maharaj has a request in Sima. Please teach me about your bhakti yoga, because I think this is the only solution to this problem. They're finding solutions to their suffering that is itself suffering. I think the only actual solution is your bhakti yoga. So you please teach me about your bhakti yoga. This is the only solution. So deha yoga viyoga cha. There's union and separation from near and dear ones because of death, because of divorce, because of politics. That's a really popular one these days. For so many different reasons, there's separation from those we love, and there may be union with those we don't love. And in this way, the souls are lamenting this world. Sankshite nanivartite. As long as we're afflicted by these dualities, then this cycle of samsara does not cease for us. Such is the plight of the conditioned souls. So it all begins with the ignorance of our own nature. And from that ignorance, the identification with viparya means opposite of our nature. That is the material body. And once you're identified with the material body, then you are absorbed in dualities, such as separation and union with desirable and undesirable things. And so long as we're absorbed in that duality, then we must continue on in this samsara. That is how that works. So even at the root of our absence of awareness, there's another root. There's a root to the root. You understand? We normally say the root is avidya, ignorance, an absence of awareness of our own self and our own nature. But there's a root to that root also. Yeah, there's another root. The several roots are there. So this verse is also very famous, Srimad Bhagavatam. Bayam dutiya biniveshata shadi shara petasha viparya ashmitihi. So the root to this root is ishara peta. Ishara peta means we're turned away from God or turned away from the absolute reality. This is called as Bhagavat Vaimukya. It means turned away from the absolute reality. Bhagavan, or you can call it Paritattva Vaimukya. The souls in this world, we have the quality of being turned away from the absolute reality. This is called Paritattva Vaimukyata. Vaimukyata means the quality of being turned away from the absolute reality. This is the root of the root. As a result of turning away from God, and to be turned away from God means to be oblivious of God. This is the meaning here, because God is an all-pervading reality. Try to understand, wherever you see existence, then God is there, because God is the very ground by which everything can exist. So it cannot be any existence anywhere unless God is there. So my favorite example for the year is peanuts and peanut oil. Yeah, I love this example now. When you have peanut oil or peanut sauce comes from peanuts, right? Without the existence of peanuts, there cannot be any existence of peanut oil or peanut sauce, correct? That is correct. Then when you're taking the peanut sauce with your dumplings or whatever it is that you use it for, wherever you take the peanut sauce, you will find that peanutness is there. There's not that you have a bowl of peanut sauce and at some point there is no peanutness there. Like most of it, there's peanutness, but this part doesn't taste like peanut. No, the peanutness is everywhere there in the peanut sauce, correct? So because it comes from peanuts, so peanutness is everywhere to be found in the peanut sauce, which is the effect of the peanut, right? You understand? So God is like the peanut. That sounds offensive, but you get the point. It's a comparison. We're trying to give visuals to help them understand. God is a peanut. He is the cause of all causes. And everything that exists is the effect, right? So he's the foundation existence, Satchidananda Vigraha. And from that foundation existence comes all the effects, which also exist. So wherever you see existence, peanut sauce, then God must be there, peanut. You understand? So to be turned away from God, how can you turn away from God? Wherever you look, even if you just look at your own self, actually God is there. Just like Nrsimha was asked, not Nrsimha, excuse me, Hiranyakashipu asked, is God in the pillar? So Prahlad, does the pillar exist? Yes, the pillar exists, then God is there also. Otherwise, how could the pillar exist? There could be no existence of the pillar without the foundation of the existence, which is God. Of course, he was actually seeing Nrsimha, as we hear, in the pillar. So that's also very helpful to actually be seeing God directly in the existence. But in any case, if the pillar exists, that means God is there. So wherever you look, there is God actually. We're only experiencing God. So there is an identity there. The world is God. You know, people speak like this sometimes. We are God, the world is God. And they are also correct from the perspective of non-dualism. They are also correct. The world is God. The world is God. We are also God. Prabhupada would even say like that. He would say Krishna is like the big Krishna, and we're like small Krishnas. Prabhupada would speak like that. And his purports to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 16 through 19. He speaks like this. We are small Krishna, and Krishna is big Krishna. So we are also God. That is okay. That is fair. But the identity is asymmetrical. That is the problem that people's thinking about this. The world is certainly identified with God. We are also certainly identified with God. But the identity is not symmetrical. We're not God in his completion. Because we are the effect of God, you can say, the potency of God. So we are also God. But there's an asymmetrical identity, not a symmetrical one. Otherwise, we wouldn't be suffering the way that we are. Maybe I've shared this story before, but when I was investigating spirituality before I contacted Prabhupada's movement, I read the Tibetan book of the living and dying, and I don't know how I got this concept from reading that book, but I got the concept that I was God. And my kind of thinking about it was because I'm a part of God, I'm also God. That was like kind of the natural thinking. I don't know, they don't even talk about God, so I don't know how I got that concept from that book, but that was the concept that I got. And I had this experience shortly afterwards, you know, embracing this notion that I was God. I was at my mom's house, and she was asking me to say grace, say prayer. And I didn't want to say prayer because I'm God. You know, I'm not going to pray to myself. That's, you know, God doesn't need to pray to himself. So I didn't say it immediately. So my mom was like, what's the problem? Say grace, say prayer. I'm like 17 years old at this time. And then I wasn't doing it. So she was getting a little bit perturbed. So she's like, why are you not saying? So I informed her, well, I'm God. That was a little bit of a blunder. Anyway, I'm God. And immediately her face, you know, the countenance of her face really like contorted. And I was like, wait. I said, don't worry, you are also God. The only difference is I'm aware of it and you're not. And she was like, boy, if you don't say grace, and then I got scared and I started saying grace. So I was like, okay, I can't be God if I'm afraid of my mom. And of course, I had no conception of Radha Krishna, just Sodamai Krishna at that time. I can't be God in his fullness if I'm scared of my mom, who's like kind of a small lady. So I was like, I need to remeditate, rethink this. This is not the full Siddhanta, the full conclusion here. So we are also God. So the point I'm explaining is very simple, that we cannot literally turn away from God, because wherever you go, you will find God is there. Even just by looking at yourself, God is also there, because you exist. So to be turned away from God means to be oblivious of God. You understand? This is the meaning here. Ishadapeta. It means to have an absence of awareness of that God. This absence of awareness of God leads to the turning away from God. Because we have absence of awareness of God, even though wherever we move, we're experiencing him, we are not aware of that. And so we're absorbed in something that is not God, as psychologically speaking. Actually, you cannot be absorbed in something that is not God. But psychologically speaking, we are absorbed in something that is not Krishna. That is our experience. So this absence of awareness of Bhagavan leads to the turning away from Bhagavan. You understand? The first condition is called as, anyway, the technical term is Paratattva Jnana Samsarga Abhava, an absence of the awareness of the absolute reality. That is the root condition. And what follows that, now this doesn't happen actually in sequence, it all's together, but we describe it in sequence just for understanding. From that, then there is Bhagavat Vaimukhyata, or Tat Vaimukhyata, the turning away fromness of God. You understand? And once we're turned away from God, then the Bhagavatam verse is saying, Ishare Petasha Viparya Ashmiti. So the word Ashmiti means forgetfulness. So all the commentator says Ashmiti here means, it literally means like forgetfulness. And the forgetfulness here is forgetfulness of our own nature. That is all the commentators say this about this word Ashmiti. So now that you have absence of awareness of God, and therefore you're turned away from God. So third condition is you forget your own self. To be turned away from God is, in a sense, to turn away from your own soul. Just as if you're face away from the sun, then you are absorbed in shadow. That is a fact. So you forget your own soul because you are turned away from God. So then this verse picks up from there, this 10:4:20. So the first condition they mention here is that you lost your own soul. You don't have awareness of your own soul. But the root of that is because we're turned away from Bhagavan. We're turned away from the absolute truth. So we want to solve our problem of suffering, foundationally speaking, for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, at least for Srimad Bhagavatam culture. But we want to solve the root problem. The root problem is being turned away from God. So the root solution is to turn towards God. That is called Tatsamukhyata, or Tatsamukya, turning toward that reality. Or is also referred to as upasana, which means to worship. That's how we generally translate it. Upasana means to sit, asana, to sit near God, or to sit in the presence of God through devotion. This is the root solution. So Bhagavatam is saying this. Bayam dutiya biniveshata shadi shadape tasha viparyo ashmatihi. So you've turned away from God, you lost your own soul, then there's viparya, identification with the body. Dvitiya biniveshata, absorption and dualities, a so-called second reality that is not God. From there you experience fear, bhayam, fear, shoka, lamentation, moha, bewilderment, everything, all the good stuff. And then tamayayato. Tamayayato means this is all maya, you're in maya. So if you want to remove this maya, there's only one way to do it. Buddha abhajatam. If you are an intelligent person, there's only one way to actually remove this maya. And this is an important talking point for Gaudiya Vaishnavism especially. People say, well, if the problem is ignorance, then just by getting knowledge, I can remove the problem, right? But here I am, I've been here, I'm not the body for 20 years. I still think I'm the body. Like, okay, yeah, I'm not the body, but like, I'm kind of like hungry right now. I didn't eat last night and my stomach is gargling, and I'm trying to like not think about that, but it's like gargling a little bit. It's a little disturbing. I'm a little tired. It's been 2 days of festivity. I'm fully in the body concept of life. You can't just shake it by the knowledge of not being the body, because Maya's got us in like a headlock. You know, when we were growing up, the bullies or my older cousins, they would beat us up. They would put us in the headlock. You know what the headlock? They put their arm around you and you can't get out. You're like screaming, yelling, kicking, but they got you in the headlock. You cannot get out. So Maya's like that. She got us all in headlock. So you said, well, I'm not the body. She's like, yeah, that's okay. Very good. She still got us. So you cannot dispel the influence of Maya just by knowledge. In fact, and you'll be interested to know this, knowledge is also a potency of Maya. Maya has two potencies, the avidya potency and also the vidya potency. Bhagavan Sri Krishna says this to Uddhava in 11th canto, chapter 11, very outset. Maya has two potency, the avidya potency and the vidya potency. So by the avidya potency, you can remove, by the avidya potency, ignorance, you lose yourself. And by the vidya potency, you become aware of yourself. But you can't get out of Maya just by the vidya potency. So vidya potency can also be termed as sattva guna. And avidya potency can also be termed as rajas and tamaguna. So you can't get out of the influence of Maya just by knowledge. Only by bhakti can the influence of Maya be dispelled. So Srimad Bhagavatam is telling this. Tam Maya yato buddha abhajetam. If you are an intelligent person, then bhaktya yesham guru deva tatma. Then you will do exclusive devotion unto the Lord, bhaktya eka isham. Guru deva tatma, knowing guru to be the manifestation of God, so and therefore worshipable, deva, and also one's very self, one's very atman, one's very self, because he's giving life to our real existence, our spiritual existence. So only by this bhakti can this influence of Maya be dispelled, and then you can come out of this. Otherwise, you cannot come out of this ignorant, not possible. So if you look at Prabhupada's purport, the whole purport is about the experience of those who do bhakti. The whole purport is about this. That only they can get out of the influence of these effects. What are the effects? The loss of our own soul in the virtual reality that is Maya. Just like we lose our own soul in Instagram, we lose our own soul in YouTube or Netflix or this, that, and another, whatever it is, politics. The loss of soul is very palpable in the modern era, or postmodern era, I should say. So you lose your own soul because of identifying with bodies, and you absorb the dualities of separation and union, happiness, distress, fear, and lamentation, etc. And this problem cannot be solved unless we agree to turn towards our source, Tat Samukya. Unless we are agreeable to that, we cannot solve this problem. And the highest form of turning towards our source, Tat Samukya, is bhakti. Only by bhakti can this Maya be dispelled and our issues be solved. Otherwise, not possible. So we should become Krishna's devotees. And this is the solution to all the problems, spiritual and material. So people, if they were asked devotees, how do you solve this social issue? How do you solve that social issue? These social issues are so popular today. So we should give answer by turning towards Bhagavan Sri Krishna. That would be very dissatisfying answer. This answer is also very dissatisfying to bhaktas themselves. They will call it a spiritual bypassing. You're a spiritual bypassing issue, absolutely. Because Buddha Abhajatam, because I have the intelligence to understand that this is all the effects of Maya. The fighting that is going on, that is all the effects of Maya. But Maya cannot be there where Krishna is there. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hayandakar. Kaviraj Goswami says, whereas there is the sun of Krishna, then the darkness of Maya cannot come there. Can darkness and light have the same locus? No, they cannot have the same locus. So unless we appreciate that the reason all the problems are coming is because of Maya, if you don't appreciate that point, then you will be bewildered with the idea that you will solve the problem by some material means. No, there are no material solutions to material problems. The so-called material solutions to material problems are more problematic. Dukkha shadam ta api dukkha. Their solutions for dukkha is itself dukkha. Yeah, they bring in more and more suffering to the world. So if they ask us Gaudiya Vaishnavas, if we're in good consciousness, what is the solution? We should say very boldly, chant Hare Krishna. A very dissatisfying answer. Chant Hare Krishna, hear Hari Katha, turn towards the absolute reality. Why do you say like that? Because sun and darkness cannot exist in the same space. So if you want to remove darkness, then you have to insert the light. You know, one thing my mom tells me when I say, I used to find it extremely cringy I still kind of do because it's like a popular New Age thingy, but I've started to appreciate it more. She has this phrase, anchoring the light. I used to be like, oh my God, it's so New Age, so cringe. But that's exactly what it is. Krishna is the light. Krishna Surya Sam. Krishna is the light. And his bhaktas, we're supposed to anchor that light to this world. And by anchoring the light, then you can dispel the darkness of Maya. And the darkness of Maya is dispelled and solutions solved. Otherwise, not solved. So people will call it a spiritual bypassing this, that, and the other. Okay, you have your method for trying to solve the solution. I have my method. I'm not bypassing. I have a different approach, different strategy. Okay, I had many other things, but my time is run out. So the last thing you can just say here is this verse is spoken by Kamsa. But he had done the nonsense of killing Devaki's children. He's trying to give pacification. So in this way, he is speaking Atma Tattva Gyan to Devaki. And one commentary by Jiva Goswami in this section, he says that for people who are cruel, their knowledge of Atma Tattva only nourishes their cruelty. And so this is an example of that. Still, we have a saying in the Western world, give the devil his due. There's a saying like that, give the devil his due. So although he's a cruel person and he's saying this as justification, he still has a point. And it is not a bad point. So we can give the devil his due. We speak nice philosophy. Although we will not follow his example, practically. So I'm gonna pause there. There's 12 minutes. I like to leave some room for questions, like actual room for questions. You know, many times we just go up to the final minute and say, okay, are there any questions? Like I'm gonna say it's gonna take me 30 seconds and ask the question. So I like to leave some time for that. And if there isn't anything, I had a few other things that could have been said, but I'll stop here. So who wants to go? I don't know who to.
William, Prabhu, go ahead.
Yeah.
But be brief. There are other people, okay? William, Prabhu.
Thank you, Ananda Bihari. Prabhu, who's giving the lecture, I haven't seen you in a long time, and this is I just wanted to say, it's so nice to see you, Prabhu. And I really enjoyed this lesson today. I just wanted to ask you a question. I remember speaking to you a while back, and I asked you, can Maya really read my mind? And I think the answer was yes. But I'm not sure. So ever since then, I'm like, woof, I gotta be careful what I'm thinking too, because if she can get in my head, forget about it.
Forget she can get in your head. She is your head. Yeah. The mind is a element of nature or of Maya. Right? The body is of nature, the mind is of nature, the ego is of nature. So forget getting in your mind, she is your mind. In a sense. So unless you fill your mind with Krishna, then the default setting is Maya only. Understand? Just like the iron rod, by nature, the iron rod is cold. So similarly, our mind and body, by nature, is of the coldness of inert matter. It is jada. Jada means inert matter. That is just its nature. So by its nature, it is Maya. But if the iron rod is stuck in fire, then the fire can attain oneness with the iron rod. This is called Tadatmya Sambandha. It attains like a oneness with the iron rod. And that same iron rod, which is by nature cold, can now burn someone. It has warmth to it. It even has a little illumination to it. So by nature, our mind is Maya, but we can make it Krishna conscious by filling it with Krishna. Krishna Nam, Krishna's Rupa, Krishna Leela, Krishna's qualities. And then by doing so, our mind becomes Krishnized. And Prabhupada likes this word, Krishnized. It attains Tadatmya with the illuminating energy of the spiritual world. Otherwise, don't worry about Maya reading your mind. She is your mind. Finish. Mana shashtan indriyani pakritistani kashati. The souls are struggling in this world with the mind and senses which are rooted in Prakriti. Manashashna Indriyani Prakriti Stani, they're rooted in Prakriti, the mind and the senses. So don't worry about Maya reading the mind, she is your mind. That's why all sorts of nonsense is going on regular, unless we put it on something wonderful. All right, that's my answer this time.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Jai. And anyone else wants to say anything? Make some comment or question. I don't know, there's something in the chat box. I'm now eating a peanut. Okay.
Jai Jagannath Prabhu, beautiful presentation. I really like how you addressed the spiritual bypassing thing. So my question is, does it actually exist, that type of thinking where we become overly callous to other people's, pain and things, and we just think, oh, why bother opening a school? Why bother opening a hospital? You're not the body anyway, so let's just keep going. Does that exist, spiritual bypassing, or is it just a myth?
Well, becoming callous does exist. That is usually the symptom of Gyanis. When they do Nishkama Karma Yoga and they attain Antakara Nishuddhi, the purification of their solar body, and then Gyan manifests. Gyan means the awareness of the difference between matter and spirit. Not just the knowledge of it, but the awareness of it. Then they attain a callousness towards nature. There's a mention. Their hearts can become callous towards all that is of the gunas of Prakriti, knowing themselves to be different. So that is there. That's why Rupa Goswami says, in the beginning of bhakti, a little Gyan, a little Vairagya may be useful, but actually it is not really the means by which we advance in bhakti. And he says, because the tendency of Gyan and Vairagya is to make the heart hard. He said, there's a tendency of Gyan and Vairagya, it makes the heart hard. So he said, normally just by bhakti alone, the bhaktas will attain everything and their hearts will remain soft. So this is a thing for sure, becoming callous. And as far as the spiritual bypassing term, this term was a term that was created by a Buddhist guy. And he used a term in the context of his observation of his community of Buddhist followers, where they didn't want to deal with certain like empirical issues that were pertain to their bodies and mind on the strength of their spirituality. And so there were like things that were practical for life itself. Life means empirical life, like your relationship with your family and your body. You didn't want to deal with that. And you would use your spirituality as a means of escaping responsibility to engage with that. And so I'm sure certainly that is definitely a thing, that we use spirituality not as a means of moving towards the reality, but as a justification for not dealing with the things that we actually care about. In other words, we're actually preoccupied with the body and mind, the empirical world. And then when it gets too muddy for us and we don't like to deal with it anymore, then we're like, yeah, I'm spiritual. And actually we should just do the spiritual thing. How come you weren't talking that game from the beginning? Because you're actually concerned about this and now you're using your spirituality as a scapegoat for engaging with that. So that certainly is a thing that happens. Absolutely, why not? But our point is another point. We're not talking about persons who are actually preoccupied with matter. And then when it gets too tough, then they want to use their spirituality to scapegoat that responsibility. We're talking about orienting our existence toward that reality from the outside. Not that I'm using that reality to solve my problems on this plane. You understand? In other words, people use their bhakti to solve their issues. And then if they see that the issues are not dissipating, then they want to use their spirituality to escape their issues. So that is spiritual bypass. That's not very healthy. But we're giving a third option here. Why don't we just orient our whole existence toward that reality? Like put effort in doing that. So even all the empirical elements of our life, why don't we engage with them in such a way that they're oriented towards Krishna? Not that you're trying to just add Krishna in front of all your zeros. You understand? This Prabhupada gives this example. Just add Krishna in the front. We like, yeah, keep my zeros and add Krishna in the front. That's very nice. That is also a strategy. But we're saying, instead of just adding the one in the front, why don't we dedicate all of our zeros to the one? You understand? Instead of just like Krishna being a part of my life, and then I have these other parts also, making all the parts of my life actually oriented towards God himself. That is another strategy. So it is not a spiritual bypass where I don't want to engage with my psychophysical stuff anymore. And I'm using my spirituality as an excuse to not engage with that. But rather, I want to engage with my psychophysical stuff by dedicating it to the absolute truth. And that's still going to require like dealing with some of the minutia of relationships and helping people. All of that is going to be there. So something like opening a hospital. My opening a hospital is dedicated to Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. What's the problem? That is Krishna conscious also. Anyway, I may have opened a hospital. Now I've dedicated that to Krishna. And in that way, dedicating all the empirical parts of our existence to Krishna, that is what we're suggesting, a third strategy. Don't use your spirituality as an excuse to escape the responsibility of empirical existence, but rather take your empirical existence and give it to Krishna, offer it to him, everything. And that way solve your issue. Another strategy. So that would be my answer there.
Very, very satisfying answer. Andrea says it helped her because she put that in the chat, that same question. So we're going to offer our psychophysical stuff to Krishna. Very nice. I like this one-liner. Psychophysical stuff goes to Krishna. What if this stuff not very pure, at this point? How can we offer that filth to Krishna?
Well, if something is not very pure, then you can offer your attachment to that filth to Krishna. So Rupa Goswami is given a verse for this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, just as a young boy is attached to a young girl, and a young girl is attached to a young boy, in the same way, dear Lord, let me be attached to you. You understand? So you're not going to offer the filth to Krishna, but that attachment to the filth, you can offer that to Krishna. You can pray to Krishna. Just as I'm attached to this nasty thing so deeply, let me also become attached to you. So that attachment to the filth can be offered to Krishna. The filthy thing cannot be offered, but the attachment to the filthy thing, that can be offered with a prayer like this. Because attachment is deep. So we may, a lot of us have attachments to some nasty stuff, at least periodically. So offer that attachment. Krishna, may I be attached to you like this. In other words, deeply. In this
Wow.
way.
You're shredding, Jai Jagannath Prabhu. You're just nailing it. Thank you very much. Okay, would anyone else like to ask a pertinent question?
Or you can make some comment. I think our time is.
Reflection, maybe. This is Srimad Bhagavatam. It's questions and answers and reflections and prayers and appreciations. Cindy, go for it.
Hare. Just wanted to talk about, you said like Jnana and Vairagya could kind of hurt. And I get that. Is that mine?
No.
Because I have the kind of association a lot of people have, so I feel, this from me, that I feel like very alone, other than maybe groups like this. And so most of my devotion is reading philosophy, which is if you're reading Prabhupada, it's very sobering, and it's, it is the way I think anyway. And I'm finding that it's very hard for me to be around people, not to like take my bhakti into the world and, infuse my life with my interactions, and instead I find I don't have any way to relate to people, nor do I really want to, because they're not going to understand me and where I'm coming from. So I have to come down and be on their level. And it's not a superiority thing. It's just it's like not being able to relate anymore.
Yeah.
And like, is this a phase, that is normal? Because I am newer, I didn't live in ashram, and, and I don't have the experience a lot of people in bhakti have. So is this normal? Is there a way I can offset that and really start to apply that in a way that's healthier, maybe for just me, but also for the people in my life?
Yeah, my intuitive answer to that right now is that, first of all, it's completely normal. When I joined, I I wrote a letter to all my friends, like right after I joined, about the importance of attaining Vaikuntha. And that was the end of those relationships. They thought this guy's just lost it. And then I couldn't relate. There was only one friend that I stayed connected with for another year after because I at that time moved into the monastery, and all my friends had gone off to college. And I wrote this letter about attaining Vaikuntha. So I, lost most of them. They thought I just lost it. And it was also kind of a natural, shifting point of relationships because we were just graduated high school and going in different directions. But I had one friend that I stayed in contact with for another year, my best friend, Tyler Drindo. And we met up after 1 year. After 1 year of him being in college and I was in the ashram for 1 year, we met up to hang out. And it was clear to both of us that we were like completely incompatible now because of just our different trajectories in life, our different consciousness. So we hung out for like a whole night, and then he dropped me off at the temple, and we were like, yeah, let's do this again. And it was clear that we weren't going to do it again. It was like it was clear to me, it was clear to him. And that sort of thing, it was very natural. It wasn't artificial. Actually, our trying to be together was artificial, and we were really pushing that. But finally, we kind of resigned ourselves to the fact that the rivers that we were in were moving in different directions. And so that's 100% natural. So I want to say that. The second thing I want to say to that is that, spiritual bhakti spirituality is intended to be practiced in the company of devotees. So we can't get physical company, then this online space is at least a good I would say a temporary space, because you don't know what the demons might do. They might turn this stuff off at any moment and then we would be in trouble. But as a sort of temporary holding space, we can have we can keep the softness of our humanity whilst also absorbing some of the knowledge, which tends to make us very detached from matter. And so in the company of devotees, online or otherwise, ideally practically, then we can kind of keep some of the balance of our humanity and our desire for transcendence, or our accumulating knowledge transcendence. Otherwise, there will be a tendency to just become a little bit hard-hearted. I like to also say that this is also natural. So my very first book in SSR was Science of Self-Realization. I don't know if you have that book. And so this is my first book. This is the book that made me a devotee. And the particular chapter that made me a devotee, like completely sold me in, was a chapter about a lady named Lynn Ludwig. She wrote a letter to Prabhupada about her devotees being too negative. And maybe I shared this with you also, Cindy, but she wrote a letter about Prabhupada's devotees being too negative, and that he should be more careful in whom he selects to represent his movement, because spirituality is beautiful and it's about love, and it should allow love to be, and love is, and this negativity isn't good. And so when Prabhupada responds to her, first of all, the letter was long, it's like a huge chapter in the book. The first few sentences, Prabhupada apologizes on behalf of his disciples, saying that I apologize, my disciples may overindulge in these things because they don't want to, again, be victim of Maya. And so they may be overindulging in these things. And it's kind of like a natural part of their evolution. Prabhupada speaks to that and he apologizes to that. And then after that, he said, but you should know that this world is negative. And then the rest of the letter is Prabhupada being quite negative. And then he's like, toward the end of the letter, he's like, you've spoken about this love thing, but you should know that this love is actually, there is no love in this material world. That is false propaganda. And he said in the Sanskrit language, there is no word for love in this material world. The only word we have for that is kama. The real love is known as prema, and that speaks of the love that the soul has for its source, for God, for Krishna. So I always found that letter extremely funny, because I was just like, oh my God, he just like doubled down on the thing that she was complaining about. So this is also kind of a natural part of our evolution, is that we will tend to become a little bit callous. It's like going from negative integers to zero. So when we're at the 0 point, there's like, it's like maybe come off as callous or negative. But, you know, we have to come to that 0 point so we can then discover positive integers. And so it's natural in that sense also. We've gone from negative integers to 0. And now we're going to start moving toward the positive integers. And once we've integrated the positive integers, then that will reflect in our how we engage with the environment. So I don't think we should be overly in anxiety about it. That, yeah, I'm kind of at the 0 mark, and I needed to kind of empty myself of all my illusions and preoccupations that weren't even healthy for me and not even healthy for my environment. I needed to come to the 0 mark. Now I'm going to start filling it with the positive integers, and that will also reflect. So I wouldn't bug out. Like I see a lot of like newer devotees getting like real kind of like that. And I'm like, yeah, bravo, good job. You're coming to the 0 point. Yay. And don't forget to also get the positive integers of Krishna consciousness. But that's going to take some time to integrate.
Thank you.
We have this one thing here. Kartik says, so surely you didn't mean that one should just sit and chant when one's country is under attack or children are being killed in their schools. Did you mean that the only long-term solution is to chant and cleanse oneself? But in the short term, shouldn't we do what's needed, but with the right consciousness? I'm saying in the short term, the solution is chant Hare Krishna also. I'm saying in the short term also, why not? So many other suggestions are being offered and tried by the world, and the situation is not improving. Why is not improving? The legislation books are expanding. Like anything, situation is not improving. People are trying to do this, that, and the other to stop things. Still, situation is not improving, it's deteriorating, despite their attempts to improve it. Dukkha shadam ta api dukkha. So I'm saying also in the short term, okay, we have to protect our children. Absolutely. So I'm gonna, for me, in my thinking about it, I'm not suggesting that you should do this. If I had children and my thinking about it, number one, I'm gonna take them out of these slaughterhouses because the education is not good, and they might get shot at school. That's just like a thing now, it seems. Okay, so I'm going to take them out of school, and I'm going to take them into like an area. Right now I'm in a very rural type area. Take them to a little rural area with some nice little people, and maybe I'll have a gun, and if someone comes on my property trying to do something, I'm going to do something about it. Cap, and then Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Don't mind, I'm being a little bit dramatic. What I'm saying here is that whatever people are suggesting in the short term, that doesn't also seem to be offering that much amelioration of the situation. So obviously, and this is a statement of the Bhagavatam, particularly in the case of Devaki, and Vasudeva having to decide what to do when Devaki is to be killed. The first business of a soul is to stay alive. He has to figure out how to, because there could be no sudden also without being alive. That is the bare minimum. In order to do the bare minimum is you have to be alive. And so we will naturally do that. We will naturally do what is required to live. And that includes protecting our children, doing these things without even being told that will go on. Absolutely. So I'm not saying that we should deny that sort of work. But what I am saying is that work has to be coupled with chanting Hare Krishna. That is the main work. And I'm doing the minimum work to keep myself alive. The situation on a more global level, so to speak, it's demonic. There are big demons devouring the smaller demons, and that is just a way of life. Jivo jivasa jivana. That's the way of nature. It is unavoidable. The tiger will eat the deer. The weak are the food for the strong. That is as true for humans as it is for animals. And if you want to try to solve it on a bigger level than your immediate responsibility, then I also say, carry on. I mean, we all have our different choices to make in life and the different consequences of those choices. But it is not our obligation to solve the world situation. It is our obligation to become Krishna conscious. And so I'm saying the solution in the short term and long term is the same solution only. Chant Hare Krishna. And you also, that will be combined with the bare minimum to stay alive. Labho jiveta yavata, whatever is required to stay alive, that should be accepted. And jivasa tata jignasa nato yashchahi karmabi. The balance should be used for investigation into the truth, and nothing else should be the goal of our work. So that is my take on all the different sort of issues that come up in life. So yeah, short term, long term, Bo. Chant Hare Krishna, Chant Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Jai Jagannath Prabhu.
So
Kartik, please stay alive. Please stay alive. This is your solution. Thank you for the morning affirmations, Jai Jagannath Prabhu. Very inspiring class. Happy Monday, everybody. Bhima Prabhu says in the chat, he's with the shotgun and the holy name in the country. Right? Is Bhima getting the point, Jai Jagannath Prabhu?
don't try to sell me as like Jai Jagannath was promoting gun violence on his class. I was giving an example of how a person might think in these sorts of situations. I'm not promoting.
When Prabhupada, Haribo,
Yes, Bhima Prabhu.
Haribo, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, straight from Prabhupada's lips, when New Vrindavan was under attack by a biker gang, they had actually they had actually toppled Radha and Krishna off the altar, Radha Vrindavan Chandra. Afterwards, that happened. The devotee Prabhupada asked what the devotees were doing, and they said they were just sitting in the temple cowering because the bikers had guns. And then Prabhupada said, "Then we must get guns. We must defend the deities. We must be willing to give our lives for the other devotees," because a couple devotees got shot. So take that as a practical example, straight from Prabhupada. If you feel yourself under threat, first of all, get out of the threatening situation, chant Hare Krishna, and get a shotgun with a nice spread.
He said this on morning meditation. That is okay. So my point was very simple. You should do what it takes to stay alive. That is the bare minimum. That includes the right to protect yourself in different sorts of ways. And people have different ways of thinking about that. I'm very much,
and the other devotees.
I'm very much aware of all these quotes, and you can see it on my social media if you like, Urban Sage Delivery. But as far as the Bhagavatam Class is concerned, we want to make sure that the emphasis is our main work is chanting Hare Krishna. That is our main business. And la bhoji veta yavata, whatever you have to do to stay alive, that should be accepted. The minimum required to stay alive, that should be embraced. And then the balanced time should be used in chanting Hare Krishna.
Yes, I only have a 20. I have a small shotgun. It's not a large, so it is the minimum.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Cindy, the door of our morning Bhagavatam class ashram, virtual ashram, is open to you. Please take shelter with us. We would like to be relatable to you. We hope we will. Thank you very much. Ashram means, ashraya means shelter, right, Jai Jagannath Prabhu? It doesn't mean four walls or communal living. It means surrender and taking shelter of the Bhagavatam, of the devotees of Srila Prabhupada. So please join our ashram, Cindy. Thank you very much. Beautiful questions. Beautiful answers, Jai Jagannath Prabhu. Please take prasadam. Thank you very much for taking the time. And happy Monday, everybody. Stay alive. Do the needful and chant Hare Krishna as our long-term solution, mid-term solution, short-term solution. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.